Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Capricorn Rising, also known as the Ascendant. Just to recap, pardon the pun, the rising sign differs from the sun sign in that it is the first impression that you make on others. And so it may not be who you really are. It can be false advertising, in fact, if your sun sign is quite different. So if you have Capricorn rising and your sun is in Leo, you may give the impression of being very serious and, I don't know, even when you're young, being very old, but when somebody gets you alone or when they know you better, they will realize that you're actually quite playful and a lot more generous than given credit, because Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, and there's that sense of discipline, organization, and even restriction that's associated with Saturn. And for every sign, there is a motto. For Capricorn, the sign of Capricorn, it is I can serve. And so if you know any people with the sun in Capricorn, you will know that they are the consummate people who can recycle, who are able to take a piece of clothing and make it stretch for a long period of time doing different things. Now, if we take the word conserve, we can say conservative. And definitely, I would say that Capricorn is a traditional sign and that they do tend to be conservative. We go into the political aspect of things, but I'm talking about in general, the way that a Capricorn person sees the world will tend to be traditional. With the rising sign, I feel that it may be more of the indoctrination or the influence from your family of origin. And I have gone into my theory in previous videos of this series that I believe that the first Saturn return marks the ending of the rising sign having so much influence over the personality, based on something I read that it's only like in the first 30 years that you really have a strong influence from the rising sign. And it does seem like once a person has gone through the first Saturn return, that they tend to feel more like a grown-up. And part of being a grown-up is having your own views on life. If you are always influenced by your family when you're in your 30s and 40s, you really haven't experienced individuation where you can separate their influence from yours. After all, we all have separate souls. And while family we may care about the opinions of our family and want to see them happy, sometimes we may deviate in terms, on our own path, and it may not be what they would like or what they are familiar with, and that has to be okay with you. But there may be some people with Capricorn rising that struggle with that individuation. You may have come from an environment where success was expected of you so that you could make the family look good, because Capricorn relates to ambition and status in society. So even if you are not from a family that is prominent, they may have been striving to get there, and they may have wanted their children to reflect well on their parenting. And this can create problems sometimes, because you may feel like you're not being loved for who you are, but only for your achievements. Conversely, some people with Saturn rising may have difficult childhoods of deprivation, including material deprivation. So, and I actually, when I'm looking at a natal chart in a private reading and I see somebody who has Saturn rising, whether they come from affluence or whether they come from a lower economic background, I still believe that they may have felt some sort of deprivation. Sometimes you might come from an affluent family and feel emotionally deprived, that you came from kind of a cold environment where you were seen as an ego extension of your parents. In some cases, it can be an actual physical financial hardship where either there wasn't enough or for some reason there wasn't that kind of nurturing that the child needed early on in life. And basically what can happen is that Capricorn rising becomes this very hard exterior where you may, give off this air of competency. And I always like to say that I really admire somebody with a prominent Capricorn because they always seem so put together. A woman who has, even the sun in Capricorn, but Capricorn rising, as a businesswoman, she may be really on point, but can be also stylish in a kind of a classic sort of a way. Capricorn rules structure, including the skeletal system, and I believe like architecture. So the clean lines that when people know how to dress and they wear classic clothing, but they dress in a very, it's not like trendy, but it's just also draping their body in a really great way. That can, and a lot of Capricorn rising may have high cheekbones or other types of, I would say that sun in Capricorn as well. David Bowie was a Capricorn. He had high cheekbones, really great bone structure. Marlena Dietrich or Marlena Dietrich, she, German actress, but, famous in America, same thing, very high cheekbones. And those are sun signs, but that can also, you can see the influence in the sun sign as well. But in the rising sign, people that are very tasteful and understated in their stylish tendencies, and also professional, the consummate professional. So even as a child, somebody with Capricorn rising may have seemed more mature than his or her peers. And the teacher may have given you special privileges, let you be, supervising whatever or organizing something because they felt that you were ahead of everyone else in terms of your maturity level. Also, something that can be seen by others personality-wise is this tendency to be rather, as I said earlier, rather serious. And this can work against you if you are not conscious of it, because sometimes in some there can be melancholy or pessimism. I feel that this is a remnant of childhood for many people because, again, remember, this is your rising sign and not your sun sign. This is not aspirational. This is kind of like, if you want to call it karmic in a sense, that you were born into a certain family and therefore you are conditioned by them to be a certain way, then call it that. Look at the moon sign to see how you were nurtured by your mother or whoever stood in the place of your biological mother, because you will also see like a karmic pattern, a family pattern, and conditioning. These are not necessarily who you are meant to be. The sun sign, I feel, is what we should focus on in terms of our goals and our way of being, and leave the rest of it in the dust. And a lot of times I think that some of the struggles that people have in life are due to this conditioning that they have to shake off at some point. and to find themselves. It's like if the sun sign is in a compatible element sign to the rising sign, then there's not going to be much of a conflict. For instance, if your sun sign is in Virgo and you have Capricorn rising, these are both earth signs. They form a trine, and I'm just talking about in general, not the actual degrees, which does matter when you get technical about it, but just in terms of them both being earth signs. And you're on the same page. You may have grown up feeling like you shared the values of your family, but if your sun sign is, let's say, Aries, and your rising sign is Capricorn, there may be a conflict. There may be, you may have felt like you didn't fit in with whatever it is they were about, or something along those lines, and you may take that sense of not fitting in as an adult, and that may kind of continue to plague you until you address it. So for a fire sign that has a Capricorn rising, there may be a rebellious streak where you try to be exactly the opposite. If they're very conservative, you try to, shave your head and have a nose ring and try to do everything different. But that's just a reaction. When we're acting, we're going towards what we were meant to be. We're not using, even if it's on the unconscious level or subconscious, whatever, we're not using that as a stimulus for us or a reason for us to act in the way that we're acting. We are completely free and clear of those influences, and we act on our own accord. Because the rising sign, I feel, can be a coping mechanism for dealing with life based upon trying to fit into your family of origin, I think that sometimes these things can kind of come up even past the first Saturn return, when the person has tried to become their own person, just because it's like there's a Buddhist term called samskaras, which, if you think of the word scar, some scars, they may be part of that, where there are these grooves or ruts that people get into. You could call them habits, I guess. Habits of the mind, habits of the body. And these things, I feel, may be associated with the rising sign or the moon sign. And the more conscious you are of how they impact your attitudes, the better. Because with Capricorn rising, one of those samskaras can be this tendency to view the world and the people therein with a pecking order or the caste system. And I don't know if India is ruled by Capricorn. I thought it was, and I thought that's perfect because of the caste system. It might be that I'm thinking of England with the class system, but this idea that some people are, better than others, for lack of a better term, or, well-bred, okay, the pedigree, that the socioeconomic class. Now, yes, we are aware of these differences. When we view people, we can see their social conditioning that also relates to the economic class, socioeconomic class. And we know that that does have some influence. But I'm talking about judging a person based on that, of whether or not you would give them the time of day, like have anything to do with them, basically. And that can create a snobbish attitude, an attitude that is very calculating, where you want to get in with the in crowd, with the people that are at the top of the heap, the top of the food chain. And that kind of thing is really probably not who you were meant to be. Now, if your sun is in Leo, you may beg to differ, because there are certain similarities that I see sometimes, even though Leo and Capricorn form an odd angle called a quincunx, or in conjunction. They're 150 degrees apart. They still share some things, some traits, I feel. They may express them in different ways, and they may have different goals in mind, but the interest is the same. It's the beautiful people, the A-list, and things like that. And we have to be careful about being that, I wouldn't even call it superficial, but that Machiavellian, because actually, going back to the motto of Capricorn, I said I conserve, but it's also I use. A Capricorn, a person with a prominent Capricorn, sometimes the shadow aspect is using people to get ahead. And that's something that you want to avoid as well, because especially with that facade being Capricorn, you may feel that the ends justifies the means. And of course it doesn't. One thing that I want to say, I've made this observation when I've done other videos dealing with sun sign Capricorn people, is that I believe that they are deeply sensitive people underneath it all. And I would say the same about Capricorn rising. Underneath that hard exterior can be a very sensitive person who wants to be loved and has a lot of love to give. And you are really someone that is a gem to be around for other people, because you have that constancy and that sense of continuity. Yeah, I call it that. You're not a fly-by-night type of person. So you're very enduring, you're responsible, and you are grounded, okay? You're not pie in the sky. And we need that in this world. We need people that are not flakes, that are very dependable. And it doesn't matter what your sun sign is, you're going to be like that Boy Scout or Girl Scout, where you're going to be very dependable and loyal to the person that you're with, usually, and things of that nature. And so the only thing to watch out for is excessive cynicism and distrust of others, being too cheap, being kind of stingy, because you may be concerned about your future, and therefore you may try to kind of get as much as you can out of something or someone. And sometimes you need to realize that you can't take it with you. Money is meant to be enjoyed, and enjoyed responsibly, and that you deserve nice things. You do like to have nice items. And this is the thing with the rising sign. You may be a little bit too much into the status symbol of, designer brands and stuff like that, because you're trying to portray yourself as being successful. And this is, I have to mention this because of the rising sign, it is going to be different. And if you did come from a low income family of origin, you may use these symbols like an expensive car, expensive clothing as proof that you're okay. And you really, if that's the case, you may actually spend money quite freely because you want to present yourself as being worthy. And you have to realize that it's an inside job. You can't use these material things to prove anything to other people. And if you did prove these things to other people with these, if you did prove your worthiness by having a fancy car, those people are totally shallow. So just a word to the wise there. But you're probably going to be very successful and be able to buy those things no matter what kind of background you come from. So there's that. Okay, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this type of analysis, I do this in my natal chart interpretations, and I also look at the year ahead and some of the astrological influences, the transits that are coming into your life. You can click on the link below. My website is RenaMoonAstrology.com. So take care. Bye.